Growing up, I always felt like an afterthought in my own family. Not the golden child, not even the rebellious one, just the background character in someone else's story. My name is Barbara, the youngest of 4 kids, and from as far back as I can remember, I got everything last, if I got anything at all. Amy, my sister, is 5 years older than me. Jake and Tyler, my brothers, are 7 and 8 years older. By the time I came along, my parents had already poured their energy and pride into them. For me, there was barely anything left. My clothes were always Amy's hand-me-downs, except they weren't just hers. They'd already belonged to our cousin before Amy outgrew them. By the time they reached me, the colors had faded, the fabric thinning like old paper. Zippers snagged, seams strained, and every time I complained, Mom would wave her hand. "Just make it work a little longer, Barbara. Clothes don't grow on trees." That phrase was her favorite, as if money grew on branches for everyone else but us. Electronics? Forget it. By the time my siblings' old phones and laptops trickled down to me, they were practically antiques. My first smartphone was so slow that apps froze every few minutes, the cracked screen glittering like a spiderweb under the kitchen lights. I didn't even notice the cracks after a while. They became a permanent part of my world, like the wallpaper in my bedroom or the sound of Tyler's laughter echoing through the halls. One evening, I gathered my courage during dinner. The 5 of us sat around the oak table my father always polished on Sundays, the smell of roasted chicken filling the room. My siblings chattered easily about their days: Jake's engineering project, Amy's volleyball tournament, Tyler's art class. My fork hovered above my plate as I forced the words out. "Mom, Dad, my laptop keeps shutting down in the middle of my research. Could I maybe get a new one for my birthday?" Dad didn't even look up from his plate. He stabbed at a potato, chewed thoughtfully, then muttered, "Those things are expensive, Barbara. We just can't afford it right now." Silence fell over me like a heavy curtain. I nodded, pressing my lips together. The next weekend, they bought Tyler a brand new gaming laptop because, as Mom explained proudly, he needs it for his graphic design class. I didn't say a word. What hurt wasn't the hand-me-downs or the neglect of my requests. It was the way my family looked straight through me, as if I were a ghost seated at that very table. Every dinner was the same performance: Jake's grades, Amy's team victories, Tyler's latest masterpiece. I'd push my food around my plate, waiting for someone, anyone, to turn to me and ask, "How was your day, Barbara?" But that question never came. Parent-teacher conferences? A parade for my siblings. For me, the school had to call to remind them. Once, my chemistry teacher even mentioned it. "Your parents couldn't make it this semester again? Is everything all right at home?" I smiled politely, lying through my teeth. "They're just busy." No one at home seemed to notice that I had found my passion: chemistry. From the very first day of freshman year, it enchanted me. The way elements fused into something entirely new felt like a language I had always known but never heard spoken aloud. To me, it was magic, but a magic I could explain. I joined every competition, collected ribbons and medals, stayed after school for the chemistry club. The lab was my sanctuary, the place I felt seen, even if it was just by glass beakers and glowing flames. "Barbara, your solution to this problem was really innovative," Mr. Roberts, the club advisor, told me once after I won first place in the regional science fair. "Have you thought about pursuing chemistry in college?" Of course I had. It was all I thought about. At home, I tried to recreate experiments in my bedroom. I'd save up babysitting money to buy small kits online. Once, while working on a harmless demonstration of catalytic decomposition, the reaction gave off a sulfur-like smell. Mom banged on my door. "Barbara, what is that? Open this door right now." With a sigh, I let her in. The smell was sharp, but completely safe. "It's just a demonstration experiment, Mom." She wrinkled her nose dramatically. "This has to stop. The whole house stinks. What if your father brings clients home?" Tyler walked by just then, smirking. "Little sis is cooking meth in there. Should we call the cops?" "Shut up, Tyler," I muttered, cheeks burning. "Don't talk to your brother that way," Mom snapped immediately, her loyalty quick and absolute. "Clean this up, now." The injustice stung. That night, I packed up my supplies and started bringing them to Grandma Ruth's house. Grandma was different. She actually looked at me, really looked. "Tell me about this one, Barbara," she'd say, leaning close as I measured solutions at her kitchen table. Her hands, wrinkled from years of gardening, would hold my notebooks as I jotted down observations. She didn't flinch at the smells or mess. Instead, she asked questions, curious and encouraging. Her kitchen became my laboratory, her dining table my workbench. Hours passed with her by my side, sipping tea and nodding at every explanation. For the first time, I felt someone truly saw me. By senior year, my path was crystal clear. Graduate with honors, study chemistry in college, work in a real lab someday. I knew my parents had helped my siblings with tuition, loans, grants, even dipping into retirement savings. Whatever it took, they made sure Jake, Amy, and Tyler had their futures secured. So when I sat them down at the kitchen table after receiving my acceptance letter to State College, I wasn't prepared for their reaction. College? Dad blinked at me, genuinely confused. I didn't think you were planning on going. I laughed, thinking he was joking. Why wouldn't I? I've been talking about chemistry since freshman year. I've won competitions. How could you not know this? Mom shrugged, her tone careless. You've never really talked about it with us. We thought maybe you'd just get a job after graduation. My mouth went dry. I've been planning this for years. Dad leaned back, voice soft, almost paternal. Look, Barbara, college is expensive. We've spent a lot on your brothers and sister already. We just don't have anything left for you. Those words landed like a knife. Don't have anything left for you. The story of my life distilled into 6 perfect words. I didn't cry. I did not scream. Instead, something inside me hardened, solidified like cooling glass. I should have known better than to expect anything different. Fine, I whispered, pushing back my chair. I'll figure it out myself. And that night, lying awake in my hand-me-down bed, I knew I meant it. After that night at the dinner table, when my parents said they had nothing left for me, the world felt sharper somehow, like every corner had an edge waiting to cut me. I carried the acceptance letter to State College in my backpack for weeks, unfolding it in private when I needed to remind myself I wasn't invisible. The bold black letters felt like proof. Someone believed in me, even if my own family didn't. At school, my chemistry medals still hung proudly in the science room. Mr. Roberts, my advisor, gave me extra lab time, always reminding me that my future was bright. Barbara, you've got something rare, he'd tell me, tapping his pen against my project notes. The ability to see possibilities where others see walls. His words stayed with me, especially on the nights when Mom's dismissive tone echoed in my ears. Grandma Ruth became my secret refuge. Every Saturday, I'd pack my backpack with beakers, notebooks, and reagents, heading to her house 2 blocks away. She'd greet me with that familiar smile, her apron dusted with flour, as though she'd been waiting all week just for me. "What are we cooking up today, Maddie?" she'd ask, using the nickname only she was allowed. "Something harmless, I promise," I'd laugh, setting up on her kitchen table. She'd lean over, chin propped on her hands, genuinely interested. "Explain it to me as if I'm one of your classmates." And I would. I'd talk her through every measurement, every reaction, watching her eyes sparkle with curiosity. Sometimes she'd ask questions that made me think harder. Grandma didn't understand the technicalities, but she understood me. That was more than I could ever say about my parents. But the more time I spent at Grandma's, the more my siblings teased me. One evening, as I came home with a faint chemical smell clinging to my clothes, Tyler wrinkled his nose. "Seriously, Barbara, you smell like burnt eggs. What's the point of all this anyway? You think you're going to cure cancer or something?" "Maybe she thinks she's the next Einstein," Jake added, smirking. Amy rolled her eyes. "You guys, leave her alone." But her voice lacked conviction, like defending me wasn't worth the trouble. Mom overheard and sighed, loud and theatrical. "Honestly, Barbara, sometimes I think you do these experiments just for attention." The words stung more than I wanted to admit. Attention. As if craving acknowledgement from the people who barely noticed I existed was a crime. Still, I kept working. The medals and certificates stacked up. By senior year, I had a binder full of accomplishments. First place at the state chemistry competition, honorable mentions in regional science fairs, even an article in a local paper that called me a promising young scientist. But when I showed this newspaper clipping to my parents, Mom only glanced at it before shoving it into the junk drawer. "That's nice, honey. Can you set the table now?" It was then I realized nothing I did would ever be enough. Graduation crept closer, and with it, the looming question of how I'd pay for college. I still believed, naively, that my parents would come through in the end. After all, they'd help my siblings. They wouldn't just leave me stranded, would they? So I sat them down one Sunday afternoon, letter in hand, heart pounding. I got into state college, I began, laying the acceptance on the table like a peace offering, and I wanted to talk about tuition. Dad frowned at the letter as if it were written in another language. Tuition? We already told you, Barbara, we don't have money for that. I stared at him. But you helped Jake. You helped Amy. You even helped Tyler with his art program. Why not me? Mom shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Dad. Then she said the words that broke me. We just didn't think you were serious about all this chemistry stuff. It's a hobby, isn't it? Do you even know what being a chemist involves? A hobby. My medals, my late nights, the sulfur-stained notebooks, all dismissed in a single breath. I've been serious about this for years. My voice cracked, louder than I intended. How could you not notice? They exchanged looks, the kind that said the conversation was over before it began. We've spent so much already, Dad said gently, as if speaking to a child. We can't stretch any further. You'll have to figure it out. There it was again, that invisible wall, slammed down between us. I felt the anger rise like a chemical reaction gone wrong. My hands shook as I gathered the letter, shoving it back into my bag. Fine, I said, my voice flat. I'll figure it out myself. Later that night, lying awake in the quiet of my room, I made two decisions. First, I'd apply for every scholarship I could find, even the tiny ones no one bothered with. Second, I'd move out the moment I graduated. Grandma Ruth didn't hesitate when I asked if I could stay with her. Of course, sweetheart, she said, hugging me tight. This house is yours as much as mine. Her warmth filled the cracks my parents left. The weeks leading to graduation were a blur of applications and late-night shifts at the cafe down the street. I wore my tiredness like a second skin, but determination kept me upright. My parents barely noticed the extra hours. If they did, they never asked why. At the ceremony, I wore the same white dress Amy had worn 5 years earlier. It was yellowed at the seams, a little too loose around the waist, but Mom had insisted there was no need to buy another. As my name was called and I walked across the stage, I scanned the audience. My parents clapped politely, already distracted by Jake whispering something about his upcoming internship. But when I looked a few rows over, Grandma was on her feet, cheering like I'd won a gold medal at the Olympics. Her pride was the only applause I heard. After the ceremony, she hugged me, tears shining in her eyes. You're going to do incredible things, Maddie. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise. And for the first time, I believed it wasn't just a dream. Still, that night, as my family gathered around the dinner table, the familiar silence closed in. Jake talked about his job, Amy about her team, Tyler about his art show. I sat quietly, medal heavy around my neck, acceptance letter burning a hole in my bag. No one asked about my future. No one even mentioned the word college. It was as if my dream existed only in the spaces between my grandmother's words and my own determination. I pushed food around my plate and thought, if I ever succeed, it won't be because of them. It will be in spite of them. That was the night my invisible childhood ended and my fight for a future truly began. Graduation should have felt like the start of everything. Instead, it felt like stepping off a cliff with no safety net. My parents made their position clear. No financial help, no support, not even the smallest gesture of belief in me. If I wanted a future, I had to build it brick by brick with my own hands. So that's what I did. 2 days after the ceremony, I put in an application at the cafe near our neighborhood. By the end of the week, I was wearing a green apron, serving lattes and cleaning counters until my back ached. The pay was minimum wage, but every dollar went into a jar labeled college fund, tucked away at Grandma Ruth's house. Moving in with her was like stepping into a different world. Her house smelled like lavender and cinnamon, the air softer somehow than the sharp, cold atmosphere of my parents' place. She gave me the spare bedroom upstairs, with the quilt she'd sewn decades ago spread across the bed. This room is yours now, she said, handing me the key. Don't ever think of yourself as a burden here. Those words alone felt like a gift. I tried to balance everything. Long shifts at the cafe, endless scholarship applications, and preparing for my first semester at State College. Most nights, I'd stumble home after closing, my clothes smelling of espresso and baked bread. Grandma would leave a plate in the fridge, always with a note taped on top. Eat something, Maddie. Proud of you. It was those little notes that kept me going when exhaustion threatened to crush me. When fall semester finally arrived, reality hit harder than I expected. Most freshmen decorated their dorm rooms, attended orientation parties, and posted smiling pictures with new friends. I didn't have time for any of that. Between classes, cafe shifts, and a work-study job at the science library, I barely slept. My planner was filled with scribbled reminders. Chemistry homework due at 9. Shift 311. Scholarship deadline Friday. I ate meals on buses, studied while standing in line at the bank, and sometimes caught myself nodding off in lectures. But beneath the exhaustion, a fire burned. I wasn't doing this for anyone else. I was doing it for me. It wasn't long before one of my professors, Dr. Larson, noticed me. He was my general chemistry instructor, a tall man with kind eyes behind rimmed glasses. After class one afternoon, he gestured for me to stay behind. "You're Barbara, right? I've been watching how you work. You don't just memorize equations, you think differently." I flushed, unsure how to respond. I just like finding patterns." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "There might be opportunities in the department for students like you. Work-study positions, research assistants. Come to my office tomorrow." The next day, I found myself sitting across from him in his cluttered office, shelves stacked with journals and glass models of molecules. He leaned back in his chair, arms folded. "You've got potential. We could use help in 2 places: the lab, prepping materials for undergrad experiments, and the science library. It's not glamorous work, but it'll get you in the door. Interested?" My heart soared. Yes, absolutely. And just like that, my schedule became even more brutal. Between the cafe, the lab, the library, and classes, I existed in a constant state of motion. But unlike the cafe shifts, the lab filled me with energy instead of draining it. Setting up experiments, handling glassware, mixing reagents, I felt at home. Even shelving books in the dusty science library had its charm. I'd pull journals from the stacks, skimming articles that sparked ideas in my mind. Sometimes I'd jot notes in a tiny notebook, fragments of inspiration that whispered about future projects. Still, the loneliness was heavy. My classmates seemed so carefree, their parents sending care packages or visiting on weekends. I scrolled past pictures of dorm parties on social media, pretending it didn't sting. At home, my parents posted family dinner photos. Everyone gathered around, except me. I didn't tell them about my classes, my jobs, or the research conference Dr. Larson suggested I apply for. Why would I? They hadn't asked, and I wasn't offering pieces of myself to people who never wanted them. One night, as I hunched over Grandma's dining table, surrounded by open textbooks, she shuffled in wearing her robe. "Still at it?" she asked softly. "I just have so much to get through," I muttered, rubbing my temples. She placed a mug of chamomile tea beside me and squeezed my shoulder. "You're carrying a lot, Maddie, but I see you. Don't forget that." Her words nearly broke me. I blinked hard against the tears, managing only a whisper. "Thank you." The semester blurred into late nights and caffeine-fueled mornings, but slowly, something remarkable happened. I started excelling. My professors noticed my dedication, my precision in the lab. Dr. Larson began giving me harder assignments, letting me sit in on graduate-level seminars. One day after I finished a complicated titration experiment, he said, "Barbara, there's a research conference coming up next semester. You should consider presenting a project." I froze. "Me? I'm only a freshman." "Doesn't matter. You've got the mind for it. Think about it." That night, I spread journals across Grandma's kitchen table, flipping through articles until I found an idea that lit a spark. Exploring catalytic methods for breaking down pharmaceutical compounds in wastewater. It was ambitious, but it mattered. A real-world problem with real-world consequences. Weeks turned into months of relentless effort. I'd come home after midnight, clothes reeking of the lab, eyes burning from lack of sleep. But the project took shape, each piece of data falling into place like puzzle fragments. When the freshman symposium arrived, I stood trembling in front of my poster, heart pounding. My voice shook at first, but once I started explaining my results, the fear dissolved. The questions came rapid fire, but I held my ground, answering with clarity I hadn't known I possessed. Afterward, a professor from another department approached me. "Extraordinary work for a first-year student. Where did you learn these techniques?" Before I could answer, Dr. Larson stepped in, pride in his eyes. "Some people are born for this kind of work. Barbara's one of them." The validation filled me with a warmth I hadn't felt in years. For once, I wasn't invisible. Still, when I returned home that evening, no one in my family knew. No text, no call, no congratulations. Only Grandma waiting with a casserole and her unshakable belief in me. It was enough. Then came the twist I hadn't expected. 2 weeks after the symposium, my phone rang in the lab. I wiped my hands on a paper towel before answering. On the other end, a calm, professional voice said, "Barbara, this is Dr. Helena Rivera from Eastridge University. I've been following your work. We have a transfer program for exceptional students. Full scholarship starting next year. You'd be working directly with our research faculty. Are you interested?" For a moment, I couldn't speak. My throat closed, tears burning the edges of my vision. Eastridge wasn't just any school. It was Ivy League, a dream I never dared to voice. When I finally managed to whisper, my voice cracked. Yes, I'm interested." That night, I sat at Grandma's kitchen table again, the acceptance letter from State College folded neatly beside me. My life was about to change forever. Eastridge University was everything State College could never be. The first time I set foot on the campus, I felt like I had crossed into another world entirely. Acres of manicured lawns stretched between towering brick buildings, ivy curling up the walls, as though history itself had taken root. The chemistry department gleamed with equipment I had only seen in glossy research journals: spectrometers, advanced fume hoods, rows of glassware that shone under the fluorescent lights. For a moment, I stood frozen at the entrance of the lab, the weight of disbelief pressing down on me. Me, the girl who had begged for a used laptop, who had done experiments on her grandmother's kitchen table. And now I was here. The scholarship covered everything: tuition, housing, even a small stipend. My new apartment, though modest, felt like a palace compared to Grandma's spare bedroom. It was the first space I could truly call mine. I unpacked slowly, savoring the ritual, lining my shelves with textbooks, pinning my medals discreetly inside the closet where no one could accuse me of bragging, setting my journals on the desk. But with Eastridge came pressure. Classes were relentless, expectations higher than I had ever known. Most of my peers came from prep schools, their parents doctors or lawyers who visited on weekends with care packages. They carried themselves with the casual confidence of people who had always been told they belonged. I carried something else, the memory of being overlooked. It fueled me. The highlight of Eastridge was meeting Professor Nathan Harris. He was a giant in the field, nominated twice for the Nobel Prize, his research cited in every chemistry journal worth reading. When Dr. Rivera introduced me, I could barely breathe. "You must be Barbara," he said without looking up from his microscope. His voice was brisk, clipped. "Helena tells me you have exceptional talent. Show me." That was it. No warm welcome, no indulgence, just a challenge. Working in his lab was brutal. He questioned everything I did, sent me back to redo experiments when my technique wasn't flawless, tore apart my assumptions with sharp precision. "You're not here to play at being a scientist," he told me once, pushing my notes back across the table. "You're here to become one." It should have crushed me. Instead, it sharpened me. Under his guidance, my work evolved. What had begun as a freshman project at State transformed into something genuinely innovative. I learned to push past failure, to sit in the discomfort of not knowing until suddenly, clarity appeared like sunlight breaking through clouds. By my third year, I had co-authored 2 papers in respected journals. I presented at conferences across the country, even one in Berlin. Standing in front of international audiences, fielding questions from skeptical postdocs, I no longer felt like the invisible girl from my family's dinner table. But invisibility had its advantages. I could choose who saw me. I called Grandma weekly, flying her out twice a year to visit. She walked the cobblestone streets of Eastridge with me, her arm looped through mine, marveling at the old architecture. She kept photos of me in my lab coat on her mantle, her pride boundless. I made her promise not to share updates with my parents. She never broke that promise. For 3 years, I kept my family at arm's length. No calls, no emails, no explanations. I told myself they wouldn't care anyway. But deep down, I knew the truth. If they found out, they would only want to claim a piece of me once success became visible. And I was right. It started with an email from the University Communications Office. A science correspondent from National Public Television wanted to feature me in a segment about emerging young scientists. They'd read my latest paper and thought it would make compelling television. My instinct was to decline. Exposure wasn't part of my plan. I had built a life behind closed lab doors, safe from the eyes of people who had ignored me. But Professor Harris shook his head when I told him. "Science isn't just about discovery," he said, adjusting his glasses. "It's about inspiration. Somewhere out there is a young girl who feels invisible. You could be the reason she decides to fight for her dreams. That struck something deep in me, so I agreed. For 3 days, a film crew shadowed me. They shot footage of me working in the lab, teaching undergraduates, even walking through campus with my books clutched against my chest. They interviewed Harris, who, despite his gruff exterior, called me one of the most promising young minds in chemistry today. When they handed me the Hawkins Award for Young Scientist during filming, the cameras caught the tears I tried to hide. The segment aired on a Tuesday evening. I sat alone in my apartment, knees pulled to my chest, watching myself on screen. The narrator called me a rising star in chemical science. Professors spoke of my contributions. Clips of me in a lab coat flickered across the screen. For the first time in my life, the world saw me, and so did my family. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My stomach dropped when I read it. Maddie, we saw you on TV last night. Your father and I are so proud. We've always believed in you. Call us. We miss you so much. It was my mother. The words blurred in front of my eyes. 3 years of silence, of absence, of dinners where my name never came up. And now they were proud? Now they missed me? I deleted the message without replying. But it didn't stop there. Over the next few days, more messages flooded in. Amy sent a long email about how the family felt incomplete without me. Jake texted, awkwardly, asking if I could help his daughter with her science fair project. Tyler simply tagged me in a social media post. This is my little sister. I ignored them all. Then came the public posts that made my blood run cold. On Facebook, beneath the video segment, my mother had commented, "This is what happens when you have parents who support your dreams. So proud of our baby girl." The audacity was breathtaking. I nearly hurled my phone across the room. Instead, I typed a short announcement. Graduation celebration at my place this Saturday. It's going to be amazing. I didn't include an address. Minutes later, my phone rang. My mother again. "Barbara," she said brightly, as if we'd spoken yesterday. "We're so excited about your party. What's the address? We'll need to book flights right away." I took a slow breath, my voice steady but cold. "You're not invited." A pause. Then laughter, brittle. "Don't be ridiculous. We're your family." Family? The word burned in my throat. "You refused to help me with college. You called my passion a hobby. You didn't even know what I was studying until you saw it on TV." "That's not fair," Mom protested. "We've always supported you. Everything we did was for you kids." "For 3 kids," I corrected, "not 4." There was silence, heavy and suffocating. Finally, Mom said, voice trembling, "We made you who you are." A bitter laugh escaped me. "No, I made me who I am, despite you, not because of you." "This is outrageous," she snapped. "After everything we've done." "You did nothing," I cut in, "and now you want to claim credit for my success. You don't get to show up at the finish line and pretend you ran the race." Before she could reply, I hung up. For the first time in years, I felt free. But I also knew this wasn't the end. My family had caught the scent of my success, and like vultures, they weren't going to let go so easily. The week of my graduation, the air in Eastridge buzzed with spring. Dogwoods bloomed white along the quad, and students lounged on the grass with books spread out like picnic blankets. For most of them, graduation was the beginning of adult life. For me, it was the culmination of years of clawing my way out of invisibility. I rented a small event space for the celebration. Glass walls, looking out onto a garden, soft music, tables draped in cream linen, nothing extravagant, but tasteful. I invited the people who had been my real family. Grandma Ruth, who flew in 2 days early, Professor Harris and his wife, Dr. Rivera, a handful of friends from the lab, even my first-year roommate and her fiancé. About 20 people in total, each of them woven into the fabric of my journey. Grandma arrived early to help set up, bustling around with flowers and trays of food. She hugged me tightly, whispering, "Your grandfather would have been so proud. He always said cream rises to the top." By 6 o'clock, the space glowed with laughter and the clinking of glasses. My colleagues toasted my publications. Harris teased me about still mixing solutions too quickly, and Grandma beamed at every word, her pride uncontainable. Then Harris stood, tapping his glass for silence. The room stilled. "I've been teaching for over 30 years, he began. "I've seen brilliance, creativity, persistence, but rarely all 3 in one student. Barbara embodies that rare combination. More than that, she carries a resilience forged in fire. Science is not just discovery, it's failure, again and again, until you refuse to give up. That is what makes a true scientist. He turned toward me. I am honored to announce that Barbara will be joining our faculty next fall as a full-time research associate in my laboratory. Applause erupted. My cheeks burned. Tears pricked my eyes. A job offer at Eastridge, coveted, hard won, almost unbelievable. I could barely process it as people hugged me, champagne glasses raised. This was my family. This was home. Toward the end of this evening, as candles burned low and guests began trickling out, Harris caught my eye. He was speaking quietly with someone at the door. When he beckoned me over, my stomach sank. I half expected to see my parents standing there. Instead, it was Ellie, my cousin. "I hope it's all right that I came," she said, her voice hesitant. "I saw your post online. I just wanted to tell you in person how proud I am of you." Relief flooded me. Ellie had been kind to me when we were kids, sneaking me candy at family gatherings, whispering jokes when no one else paid attention. I hugged her, genuine warmth breaking through the tension. "Of course it's all right. I'm glad you came." For a moment, I let myself believe the ghosts of my past could stay buried. But they didn't. 2 mornings later, my phone buzzed with an email from Harris. My office, 11 a.m., important. When I arrived, he looked uncharacteristically uncomfortable, fingers steepled. "Your parents came to see me this morning," he said. The words knocked the air from my lungs. "What?" "They showed up at the lab unannounced. Wanted to talk about you. Said they couldn't reach you directly." My cheeks burned with embarrassment. I'm so sorry. I didn't know they would." He raised a hand. "You don't owe me an apology. I told them I don't discuss my researchers without consent. Still, they seemed desperate." Desperate. The word curdled in my stomach. I knew then this wasn't about love or pride. It was about something else entirely. 2 days later, the receptionist at my workplace buzzed me. "Barbara, you've got visitors. They say they're your parents." I froze. Every instinct screamed to send them away, but something in me hardened. I wouldn't run. Not anymore. I found them waiting in the lobby, overdressed in stiff suits, looking smaller than I remembered. Mom stepped forward as if to hug me, but I didn't move. "What are you doing here?" My voice was ice. Dad cleared his throat. "We need to talk, privately, if possible." I led them to a small conference room and shut the door, arms crossed. "Say what you came to say." They exchanged nervous glances before Mom spoke. "We've been having difficulties, financially. The mortgage, medical bills. Your brothers and sister are struggling too. Everyone is stretched thin." "And?" I asked flatly. Dad leaned forward, his voice almost pleading. "You're doing so well now. That award you won, it comes with money, doesn't it? A substantial prize. We thought, maybe, you could help the family." The audacity nearly made me laugh. "So that's it," I said. "You've come for a handout." "Not a handout," Mom snapped, eyes flashing. "Family helps family. You're the successful one now. It's your turn." I stared at her, stunned by the sheer hypocrisy. I wasn't family when I begged for help with tuition. I wasn't family when I was working 3 jobs to survive. I wasn't family during the 3 years you didn't call, didn't write, didn't care if I was alive. Dad's voice softened, almost pleading. "That's not fair." "No," I cut him off. "It wasn't fair, but I lived with it, and I built something out of the scraps you left me." Mom's eyes filled with tears, the same familiar tears she had wielded all my childhood. "How can you be so cold? We raised you." "You housed me," I corrected, voice trembling now with fury and pain. "Grandma raised me. Harris mentored me. I raised myself, and I owe you nothing. Not money, not forgiveness, not a relationship." The silence was deafening. Their tears, their excuses, their desperation, it no longer pierced me. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. "Please don't contact me again." And I walked out, leaving them in that sterile conference room, the door closing with a final click that felt like the severing of a cord. Maybe it was cruel, but cruelty was what they had taught me. That night, as I sat in my quiet apartment, surrounded by lab notes and textbooks, I thought of Grandma's voice. "Don't forget, Maddie, I see you." And I realized I didn't need their approval, their apologies, or their love. I already had everything I'd fought for. But deep down, one thought gnawed at me like acid on metal. What if this wasn't the last time they came? In the weeks after my parents tried to corner me in that conference room, life at Eastridge returned to its rhythm. The lab, the lectures, the endless cycle of proposals and data collection, it all felt like armor. Every day I spent in that world was another day. Further from the small kitchen table where I had once begged for attention. but the encounter had left a residue, like an aftertaste I couldn't quite spit out. Their voices echoed in the quiet hours. Family helps family. We raised you. You owe us. I reminded myself of the truth. I owed them nothing. Still, some nights, when exhaustion pressed down on me, I wondered if cutting them off completely made me cold, or simply free. The answer came gradually, in small affirmations. One crisp autumn morning, I stood on the porch of a small brick house, the keys biting into my palm. The down payment came from a young scientist grant I had been awarded, proof that my work wasn't just noticed, it was valued. As I stepped inside, the empty rooms echoed with possibility. No hand-me-downs here, no dismissive voices, just space I had carved out myself. Grandma was the first person I invited over. She shuffled through the doorway, eyes wide, touching the walls as if blessing them. "Your own home," she whispered, voice thick with pride. "I knew you'd get here." We drank tea in the bare living room, and I promised her she would always have a place here. She smiled, patting my hand. "I don't need a place, Maddie. I just need to know you're happy." She was the only family who had ever said those words to me. As months turned into years, my research deepened. With Harris's mentorship, I expanded into environmental remediation, exploring catalysts that could strip toxic compounds from wastewater. The work was grueling, the competition fierce, but every breakthrough felt like a quiet rebellion against the neglect of my past. I published papers, presented at conferences, mentored undergraduates who looked at me with the same hungry spark I had once carried. And each time, I thought of the girl I used to be, the one hunched over faded textbooks at Grandma's table, wondering if she mattered. She did. She always had. My family, meanwhile, lingered at the edges of my life like shadows. They tried reaching out again, emails with subject lines like, "Please read and we miss you." I stopped opening them. Social media was worse. Amy posted pictures of her daughter's science project, tagging me as though I had been her teacher. Jake boasted to colleagues that his brilliant sister worked at Eastridge. Tyler shared my articles with captions that read, "Proud Big Brother." The hypocrisy might have stung once. Now, I simply scrolled past. But not all family ties were poison. Ellie, my cousin, stayed in touch after the graduation party. She wrote me letters, real letters, on paper, about her own struggles in nursing school, about how she admired my determination. Sometimes she'd call just to ask about my week. Slowly, cautiously, I let her in. It was proof that not all blood ties had to be severed, only the ones that bled you dry. I also built a chosen family. Late nights in the lab turned colleagues into friends. Harris, though gruff as ever, invited me to his home for Thanksgiving. Dr. Rivera sent postcards from her travels. My students left thank you notes on my desk after exams, telling me I made them believe they could do more. And through it all, Grandma remained my anchor. She visited often, her steps slower each time, her smile no less radiant. She'd sit in my kitchen, sipping tea, telling me stories of my grandfather. "He would have loved to see you in that lab coat," she said once, her voice distant. "He always said our Maddie was made for big things." When she passed, quietly in her sleep one winter night, I felt something shatter. The one person who had always seen me was gone, but even in grief there was gratitude. She had been my witness, my protector, my first believer. I carried her with me into every lecture hall, every conference stage, every quiet moment of triumph. The day after her funeral, I returned to my lab. Grief threatened to drown me, but work steadied my hands. I set up a reaction, lit the burner, and whispered, "This is for you, Grandma." Years later, when my name appeared on the short list for a National Science Prize, the kind that changes careers, I didn't think of my parents. I thought of Grandma's kitchen table, of the notes she'd leave me. "Don't forget to breathe, Maddie. Proud of you." People often ask me now about my family. I've learned to answer carefully. I was raised by a remarkable grandmother, I say, leaving out the rest. Some truths are too jagged to hand to strangers. Do I wonder about my parents? Sometimes. I hear snippets through cousins, that Amy still plays volleyball on weekends, that Jake's marriage is strained, that Tyler's art career never took off, that my parents' health is failing, their finances worse than ever. I don't reach out, not because I lack compassion, but because I finally understand the cost of letting them back in. To them, I am not a daughter. They see me as a resource, a story to polish their image. I am not willing to be used again. Peace, I've learned, isn't about forgiving people who never asked. It's about choosing what and who you allow into your life. In my home, on a shelf in my study, sits a small framed photo of Grandma and me, taken the day I defended my dissertation. She's holding my hand, her smile wide with pride. Beside it hangs one of my first medals from high school chemistry, tarnished now, but still gleaming faintly under the light. Every morning when I see them, I remember. I was never invisible. I was simply unseen by those who refused to look. Now the world sees me, and more importantly, I see myself.